In spite of their declaration, the children of God later went after other gods. You see, there's a craving in the heart of unregenerated man for something visible to worship. And if they cannot find an already made idol, they make one for themselves, like the God particle that scientists recently created. This is the craving that led the children of Israel to create the gold calf to worship. And we now ask ourselves what we shall choose, God or the golden calf. Even before the famous Red Sea crossing, God had proved to his people over and over again that although he was invisible to their physical eye, he was worthy of first place worship. And he told them in Leviticus chapter 19, verse 4, "Do not turn to idols, nor make for yourselves molded gods. I am the Lord your God." That command could not be clearer. And yet, in Exodus chapter 32, verse 4, Aaron took the gold, melted it down, and molded it into the shape of a calf. When the people saw it, they exclaimed, "O Israel, these are the gods who brought you out of the land of Egypt." These people hailed this gold calf as their God, later building an altar for it and bowing down to worship this creation of their own hands. What a pity. Amazingly, these people who had seen God perform such wonderful miracles, from plaguing Pharaoh to creating a highway in the Red Sea, from feeding them with heavenly manna to bringing water for them out of a rock, these people had replaced the living God with an idol. God thinks that this act of worshiping our own creation is so stupid that in Isaiah chapter 44, verse 14, he mocks the one who creates an idol. He cuts down cedars for himself. The verse says, the imagery is so ludicrous that God repeats it because there are so many levels of foolishness in this act. For example, even while the cedar was living and standing upright, it could not save itself from the axe. In Isaiah chapter 44, verse 16, God says of this man who creates an idol, he burns half of it in the fire. With this half, he eats meat. After the owner had further devalued the tree trunk by burning it to bake his bread, he picks it up. He admires it so much that he begins to carve it. And as Isaiah chapter 44, verse 17 says, he does not carve it into a table or a chair. He carves it into an idol. And the rest of it he makes into a god, his carved image. He falls down before it and worships it, prays to it, and says, "Deliver me, for you are my God." After he finishes his creation, he starts to pray to it. This burnt out remnant of a tree that could not deliver itself when it was still standing is now in a position to rescue him? Please. Although we may laugh at the spectacle, most of us are no different from this man. Our modern day gods may not be carved or molded, but will still serve and worship man-made idols, some of which are a human king. We replace theocracy with democracy or a monarchy, like the people in 1 Samuel chapter 8, verse 5, who said, "Now make us a king to judge us like all the nations." God granted their wish, but warned them of the dangers inherent in rejecting the living God and choosing a God for themselves. In 1 Samuel chapter 8, verse 12, he makes it clear that their action would end in central government. He will appoint captains over his thousands and captains over his 50s, will set some to plow his ground and reap his harvest, and some to make his weapons of war and equipment for his chariots. As their self-appointed God continues to take an ever-increasing portion of their goods and services, verse 17 warns that they will end up becoming his servants. It is possible that some of us are already regretting our rejection of the living God, just like God predicted in 1 Samuel chapter 8, verse 18, where he says, "And you will cry out in that day because of your king, which you have chosen for yourselves." Secondly, we see men are the next category of idols that we worship. Some of them in movies and sports we call stars, and we set them on a pedestal to worship, as in hero worship. Sometimes we actually refer to them as idols, as in Jamie Ferrari is my idol. Some of these idols are our own children, like Eli the priest. Anytime there's a conflict between what our kids want and what we know that God wants, we choose our kids over God, thereby turning them into idols. Little wonder that more and more you hear of children assaulting and even killing their parents. Idols cannot save. They can only kill and destroy. Some of them are we ourselves, like narcissists. We worship ourselves. Unlike God worship, idol worship takes our hearts and gives us nothing in return. It is for that reason that God calls it a curse in Jeremiah chapter 17, verse 5. "Cursed is the man who trusts in man and makes flesh his strength, whose heart departs from the Lord." Power is the next idol that people have created to worship. And we have recently been witnesses to what a worship of power can do to a state university. Unfortunately, this worship of power is not limited to worldly activities like college football. It permeates into church ministry, moving High Priest Caiaphas to plot Jesus' assassination in John chapter 11, verses 49 and 50, so that he could retain his power over the people. He said, being high priest that year, you know nothing at all, nor do you consider that it is expedient for us that one man should die for the people, and not that the whole nation should perish. Money is, of course, the biggest and most pervasive idol that we make for ourselves. No doubt you have heard that the love of money, not money, that the love of money is the root of all evil. The more money we have, the less of God we tend to retain, and the more corrupt we become. Although it is the norm in the world now, we who know the living God do not have to be like the Joneses to worship at the altar of money. Next, you have the false god. This idol is very common among churchgoers. They sit in church, listen to sermons, participate in all of church activities, but they are worshiping a god that they have created in their minds, a figment of their own imagination. They are too lazy to study the scriptures for themselves, to discover the living God. Jesus calls them mistaken in Matthew 22, verse 29. You are mistaken, not knowing the scriptures nor the power of God. Lately, scientists have created a God particle. But our quest for a man-made object of worship will not end there. You cannot expect a car that you built, the whole workings of which you know, to suddenly develop enough power to come to your rescue. Even robots, as long as you are their creator, cannot supersede you in knowledge. In the same way, the God particle, no matter how much it cost us to create or how much excitement it generated, cannot save or satisfy us. It is the work, the creation of our own hands. Unless God wraps up history soon, there will be another in the series of man-made idols, because our hearts simply cannot rest until they find their rest in God.